Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to completely transform how you think about launching your code. If you've ever felt the absolute pain of tedious manual deployments, dragging files around, moving them to a server, and just holding your breath praying nothing breaks, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to replace all of that struggle with some pure automated CI/CD magic. We'll take a Spring Boot application, containerize it with Docker, and let GitHub Actions seamlessly push it live to an AWS server. It's absolutely crucial for modern development, and honestly, it's incredibly powerful. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the real meaning of CI/CD. Then we'll talk about the manual deployment struggle. After that, Dockerization for preparing the app, using GitHub Actions to automate the magic, and finally, doing a live deployment on AWS. Section 1. The real meaning of CI/CD, building the foundation. So, what does this all actually mean? Let's start with continuous integration, or CI. Imagine you have a team of developers, and they're all pushing code to a central GitHub repository. In the old days, dealing with those merge conflict nightmares could literally make you want to pull your hair out. But CI is a practice where every single time a developer pushes code, the system automatically builds and tests the application. For our Spring Boot project, this means automatically compiling the code into a runnable .jar file. This is a huge deal because it detects build failures incredibly early, it absolutely destroys that old, well, it works on my machine excuse, and it massively improves how your team collaborates. Next comes the second half of the puzzle, continuous deployment, or CD. While CI focuses on the build side of things, CD takes over right after a successful build. It's the practice of automatically deploying that freshly built application directly to your live production server. The real beauty here is that a human being never has to manually copy files over to a server ever again. The deployment happens instantly and automatically, replacing the old running version with your newest updates seamlessly. Section 2. The manual deployment struggle, how it used to be done. Without automation, here's what your day-to-day looks like. First, you open up your terminal and type mvn clean package just to manually build the jar file. Then, you run another command to build a Docker image. Third, you manually push that image to Docker Hub so it's actually accessible. And finally, you use SSH to log into your live server, let's say an AWS EC2 instance, you pull the image down, manually stop the old container, and run the new one. Now just imagine a client asks you to change a single punctuation mark on the website. Are you really going to sit there and do all of this again for a tiny text change? No way, it is absolutely exhausting. Section 3. Dockerization, preparing the app, containerizing for portability. Let's move on and see how this builds, because Docker is the perfect tool to fix this mess. Think of a Docker container like a heavy-duty cargo boat packed with absolutely everything it needs to survive. Your code, the runtime, the libraries, the whole shebang. It's perfectly sealed and ready to be safely shipped to literally any server in the world. Because everything is bundled into this single Docker image, you completely eliminate the weird environment discrepancies that usually plague deployments. If it runs locally on your laptop, it's going to run exactly the same way on your AWS server for sure. To actually build this container, we use a Docker file, which acts as a super simple recipe. We grab a lean Java 21 environment, set up our workspace, and drop in our compiled jar file. We expose port 8081, tell Java how to run the app, and boom, those 5 simple lines convert our code into a perfectly portable image that is completely ready for the cloud. Okay, so we have our code, and we have our Docker file. But as we just discussed, running all this manually is a huge pain. So what if all of this manual server management, the building, the pushing, the server restarts, what if all of that happened automatically on just a single git push command? Section 4. GitHub Actions, automating the magic and writing the deployment workflow. GitHub Actions is literally our magic wand here. We just create a .yml file inside the .github/workflows directory of our repository. This file triggers automatically the second you push to the main branch. It spins up an Ubuntu runner, which is essentially a temporary robot in the cloud whose only job is to do your chores sequentially. First, it uses an action to check out our source code. Then it sets up Java 21 on the runner. Next, it runs mvn clean package to build our jar file. And finally, it builds the Docker image and kicks off the deployment. It perfectly mimics all our manual steps, doing it flawlessly in the background while you can just sit back and relax. Now, what's really interesting about this part is how we handle security. When GitHub Actions tries to push to Docker Hub or log into our AWS server, it obviously needs passwords and keys. But we never ever hardcode these into our source code. Instead, we securely store our environment variables in GitHub secrets. We store our Docker username and a personal access token as the password. For our AWS EC2 instance, we store the public IP address, the default Ubuntu username, and we even paste the raw text of our private.pem SSH key. GitHub keeps all of these perfectly safe and just injects them into our workflow exactly when they're needed. Section 5. Live deployment on AWS. The final destination. Just think about the contrast here. The old way meant a dedicated developer sitting at their desk, manually compiling the code, pushing images, and then SSHing into a live server just to restart services. It's incredibly slow and super prone to human error. But the new way? A developer simply types git push. That's it. GitHub Actions completely takes over. It uses a specialized tool like the Appleboy SSH action to securely reach out to our live AWS EC2 instance. It automatically pulls the fresh image from Docker Hub, stops the old container, prunes unused images to save disk space, and spins up the new container on port 8081. Let's map out this entire automated journey because the timeline is awesome. Minute 1, the developer commits code on their local machine. Minute 2, the code hits the GitHub repository. Minute 3, the GitHub Actions runner automatically spins up, compiling the Java code and building that Docker image. By minute 5, that fresh image is successfully pushed and safely stored in Docker Hub. And by minute 6, the workflow uses SSH to connect to the AWS EC2 instance, pulls the image, and your live application is updated. From a local laptop to a live cloud server in just minutes, with absolutely zero manual intervention. There's an insight from the source material that really hits the nail on the head. For those doing this manually, CI/CD looks like absolute magic. And it really, truly does feel like a superpower. You've completely replaced the daily drudgery of infrastructure management with an automated, reliable, and entirely repeatable process. Which leaves us with this final thought. Your infrastructure is handled. Your deployments are invisible, triggering automatically every single time you push your code. So your pipeline is fully automated now. What new features are you going to build with all the time you just saved? I hope this explainer empowered you to start utilizing GitHub Actions and Docker in your own projects right away. Keep exploring cloud automation, and we'll catch you in the next one.